Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order the Marin Water Board meeting of November 19th, 2024. Terry, could we have roll call, please?
Yes, Vice President Matt Sampson,
Here.
Director Monty Schmidt,
Here.
Director Jed Smith,
Here.
Director Larry Russell,
Here.
and President Ranjiv Kush.
Here.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved.
Second. Terry, are there any public comments on today's agenda?
There are none. Oh, I'm sorry for today's agenda. Yes, two hands were raised. The first one, John Dulcini, and then Annie Dulcini. Go ahead, Mr. Dulcini. This is regarding the agenda.
I'm sorry, I think I'm for a non-agenda.
Okay, we still have a few more items before we get there.
Thank you.
Annie Dulcini, is that the same?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was for a non-agenda as well.
All right, no problem. Okay, thank you. There are no comments for the adoption of the agenda.
A roll call vote, please.
Vice President Sampson,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move then to agenda item number 5, which is a resolution commending our outgoing director and colleague, Monty Schmidt. I'd like to start by reading the resolution of commendation. Should we give Jed a hard time for not being here in person?
Bring it.
I'll think of some kind of reprimand.
He's on the East Coast, so we could just go really late.
Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah, lucky all.
But this, please let me, this is a real honor to be able to do a resolution of commendation for Monty Schmidt. A resolution of the Marin Municipal Water District Board of Directors honoring Monty Schmidt for his years of service as a district director. Whereas throughout his time on the board, Monty Schmidt has worked tirelessly to promote the mission of Marin Water, and whereas he has served with distinction as director for a total of 4 years, and whereas he has attentively represented community members within the district's Division II service area, and whereas during his years of service, he has faithfully served the Watershed Committee, Operations Committee, and Finance Committee, and whereas he represented the district at TAM, Tamales Bay Foundation, and Lagunitas Technical Advisory Committee meetings, and whereas he served as president of the board in 2023 and vice president in 2022, and whereas he will especially be remembered for his dedication to ensuring the district's continuous efforts to protect and enhance the watershed and all its inhabitants, and whereas his thoughtful input and collaborative spirit throughout his service has benefited the work of the board and the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Marin Water Board of Directors recognizes Monty Schmidt's achievements and his contributions to Marin Water and the greater Marin community, and expresses its appreciation and gratitude for those contributions and wishes him well in all the years to come. I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
A second, please.
Second.
Terry, could we have a vote?
Vice President Sampson,
Yes.
should I ask for Director Schmidt's? Director.
Self-dealing? Some sort of conflict of interest? I don't know. Actually, I'll abstain.
Okay. Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
and President Kush.
Aye. Okay, with that, resolution number 8798 is approved at the Board of Directors' regular bi-monthly meeting held this 19th day of November, 2024. Monty, on behalf of all of the Board of Directors and staff for Marin Water and our customers, I'm really proud to be able to offer you this gift.
Thank you, guys. Well, I would, I
Mike,
wouldn't want to,
Mike.
I'm gonna use my 3 minutes. Terry, you can
Go ahead.
start the timer if you want to. You know, I of course wrote some things down. Like I'm following in Phil Sauter's example. I'm going to be joining him on the other side of the dais here soon. So, I gotta start practicing. But as I reflect on the last 4 years of the challenges that we have faced and the accomplishments, I want to really accentuate the things that we did, and it's really a we thing. I really don't think there's anything I did. I think I contributed significantly, but it's really so much about this district is about the things that the board and the staff and importantly our community make possible. And it's only when all three of those things are aligned that we do some really amazing things. And we went through a pandemic. We went through the driest year in 125 years. We cut back on our water usage by 25%, being almost best in class in the entire state of California. In response to almost running out of water or our efforts to make sure that we didn't, we launched a water supply reliability analysis and have aggressively pursued efforts to make sure that we don't run out of water when we run into the next drought and that we can manage climate change. We faced a fiscal crisis that was driven in part by the drought, but also because we had a backlog of maintenance and other costs that we needed to address. And I'm super proud of the board for raising rates to make sure that we generationally weren't pushing the responsibilities to maintain our system onto the next generation, and that we had the funds to be able to pay for our staff and retain them, and to be able to have the funding so that when we need to build water supply projects, we have the financial standing to be able to do that and ensure that future generations have the water that they need. We completed a new contract with the union, which I think was really important because embedded in it was respect and appreciation for staff, to make sure that our staff, again, are recognized and paid fairly, but also that we did it in a way that was fiscally responsible. We did a 5-year strategic plan, which I know we sweated over the words and had many meetings where we talked about those things, but embedded in that are some really incredible language that I think really does capture a modern spirit of this district and what we aspire to do and the challenges that we're facing and our attitude about how we're going to address them. And, last but not least, as somebody who really does love our watershed and the ways that we have worked to make sure that we are more resilient against wildfire, all the work that's been done and the things that we've done to address recreation management. And I think we have made progress on the one issue that I came in hearing the most about, which was mountain bike access and e-bikes. I think we have made really important progress, even though it's still a work in progress. So it's been a huge 4 years in my mind, and I really appreciate everything that everybody has done to make that a great year, because it took everybody. And to recognize that while it's been a really busy 4 years, stepping down is enabling me to do something that's really important to me, which is actually to spend time with my 2 kids who still want to spend time with me, and I don't want to miss that window. And so that's a really important thing for me. But I'm not going far away, because I'm going to be continuing to work for the Nature Conservancy, where I work on policy science and projects that restore our rivers and our water supply in our Northern California region. So I'm not going far away, and I'm a customer. So I will continue to be paying very, very close attention. I want to particularly thank my wife and kids who waved signs on election day to help me get elected, and then exhibited a lot of patience and understanding when I missed a lot of really important life events that I'm looking forward to trying to make more often. And to the staff who really, not the 2 of you really, but to Adrian and and all the staff that basically really work behind the scenes. I mean, we all do, but there's so many people at so many levels, from reading meters to fixing pipes to doing the finances to caring for the watershed to doing media relations and managing the board, and it takes so much to run this organization. And the two of you, Ben and Molly, you guys have really been steady leaders through some pretty tumultuous years. I'm sure that there have been bigger years maybe, but from what I've seen, the two of you really managed us well. So, and then lastly, I have to thank the community, the people who show up every board meeting and those who are on the phone. We may not all agree on and share the same opinion, but it's people who care that are in our community who show up and give us their attention, push on us, test us, give us ideas. If people stop caring, we are in trouble. So big thank you to Phil and to many others who show up. And thank you for the opportunity. And to the people who elected me, I should say thank you first and foremost, because without them, I wouldn't have had this chance to serve. So it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Monty, we're not going to give you the last word on this one. So I'm going to ask first if any of our directors have comments. Matt, I'll start with you. Larry? Jed?
Yeah, Monty, I think your thoughts that you expressed just now showed how terrific you are, your positive energy, you're a community leader, and you're a new friend. I'm so happy to have you in my life. I found that in every decision that we made, every issue that we contemplated, you always had Marin and Marin Water at your forefront above any specific agenda or constituent. And your thoughtful advocacy for the watershed, its habitat, native species was and this beautiful corner of the world that I know you enjoy in many ways, and we all do. You are a steward, and I'm proud to have worked with you.
Jed.
Thanks, Jed. Monty, you know what they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You were the board president when I joined, and I watched you through that first year. And I felt, in addition to getting us through a lot of the big topics that you mentioned, you did everything with a spirit of openness and humility. That meant a lot to me. And it's something I've been trying to copy, probably unsuccessfully, for the last year. So thank you for that.
You're right. I might have set you on the wrong track by constantly screwing up procedure, but so that might be my fault too.
The next president may get it right finally. Terry, do you have any public comments?
There are none.
Okay, then I'd like to announce a 15-minute recess just to celebrate a little bit.
Thank you.
Can we get a photo?
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We'll start with public comments on items that are not on the agenda.
Yes, we have several. Mr. Phil Sauter, Abe Harden, and then Carol Dulcini.
I'd like to thank staff for another really good on the waterfront mailing for this billing cycle. The focus on water conservation, especially now that it's tilted toward outdoor savings in potable water use, is much appreciated. I also like the 3 simple charts showing reservoir storage, water usage, and rainfall data. These metrics give customers an idea of how we're doing in terms of being ready for the next drought. Below these charts is a pointer to the district's WaterWatch webpage, which I've been following for the last year or two. The WaterWatch page provides more detail on reservoir storage, water usage, and rainfall. But lately I've been coming away with a few more questions than answers. For example, our reservoir storage is higher than average, but it's 5% lower than it was last year. Is that good news or bad news? For the last few months, we've been taking a lot less water from Sonoma than we did last year. Was that a conscious decision to avoid spilling or just a clog in the supply line? During the past couple of weeks, we're now taking more water from Sonoma than we did last year, but I'm not sure why. Are we trying to build back reservoir supply before the rains hit? And does that mean spill is no longer a concern? I can also see that we're using 1 million gallons more potable water every day compared with last year. That's concerning because I know that we have a goal of saving 4 million gallons a day through conservation, and it looks like we're going in the opposite direction. I know that some other supply options are expensive, disruptive, and lower in quality. So I really focus on conservation, which doesn't have many of those problems. It would be helpful to get some additional insight as to where this increased use is coming from. Are we all using 8% more water than we did last year? Or do we have some heavy users who haven't yet dialed back their irrigation systems? And if so, where are they? I know the district has or can easily query this information from its vast supply of customer data. I'm sure that members of the public would appreciate the district providing some context to these data points so that we know what steps we can take to protect our valuable water supply. And I know the board would also make good use of these insights in making its decisions. In the half minute I have left, I wanted to mention that the Saturday broom pull at Bontempi was a real success. Suzanne got 40 people there, and when we cleared the patch she had set aside for us, she lost no time in marching us a few hundred yards to tackle a patch that she was holding in reserve. There was a lot of broom that met its end that day. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harden, please.
Good evening, board and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm here to express ongoing concern regarding the potential expansion of the Sula-Huli Reservoir. We are glad that the process has been extended to allow staff and consultants additional time to prepare cost estimates. It remains important, however, that those estimates be thorough and complete. All potential costs must be on the table, including costs that up to this point have been excluded. For example, the cost of replacing the pump station if the dam is raised, the cost of electrification of that new pump station. As the Sula-Huli watershed will not fill the proposed expanded reservoir, the cost of conveyance of Sonoma water to Sula-Huli must be included. The cost of the escalation of the budget and for inflation and unforeseen conditions. These will require a substantial project contingency. The actual expected engineering, planning, and project management costs. These are but a few of the costs that should be included when the costs are presented in December. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carol Dulcini and then Annie Dulcini Mount.
All right, go. Congratulations to Monty, and have fun with your family. I'd like to express my gratitude to the staff and board tonight. Thank you for your willingness to extend the timeline on the decision to select the preferred alternative for increasing local storage. It shows that you are willing to take a realistic look at these options. It is reassuring that you are giving yourselves extra time to assemble a solid body of facts because the stakes are high. This will be a big decision for the board come next year, with significant potential impacts on those who have to pay for these costly projects, as well as on those in the wider community of Marin and even beyond Marin. If Sula-Huli is expanded, we all lose. Those of us in this room, on this Zoom, in communities served by MMWD, and in communities in neighboring counties, we all lose due to the ripple effects that come from the inundation of viable agricultural lands. That is why many of us support the incremental approach. Achieve the goal of an additional 12 to 20,000 acre feet through a combination of options. Instead of aiming for a home run, hit some solid singles. Move forward with the spillway gates. Move toward implementation of conservation. explore ways to convey Sonoma water during droughts. We are confident that a solution can be found that will reach the district's goal to increase supply without having to resort to drastic measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Annie Dulcini, then Maria G, and then John Dulcini. Annie?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking my comment. I wanted to speak out again in opposition of expanding the Sulahuili Reservoir. I'm a part of a multi-generational family that has close ties to West Marin and its beautiful agricultural land. Displacing these families, including their homes, their livestock, their businesses, their livelihood, it's wrong on so many levels. The impact alone of our environment and the local food system should be heavily considered, as it would be detrimental to both. The emotional impact it would have on families would be devastating, as these lands have been a part of their history for hundreds of years. I have a couple main things I want to talk about that are highlighted that do not make sense to me. Number one is the water conservation. This is absolutely needs to be a priority. It's appalling to me that I heard of 40% of the Marin water is currently used for landscaping. Are we willing to ask the community to conserve rather than taking away their agricultural land? If the public knew of the consequence of their current water usage, I feel like they would be willing to make a sacrifice to keep local multi-generational families able to continue to farm and concurrently keep local food alive. Number two is Kent Lake. I believe that more effort needs to be made to explore and pursue this option. This is a location in which MMWD already owns the surrounding property, and it would not displace families. The other two locations are MALT protected land in which families reside along with their businesses. MALT protects these lands in perpetuity so it can remain a thriving part of Marin County's agricultural community and remind people of where their food comes from. If you use your resources to concentrate on the expansion of Kent Lake storage, it may open up your eyes when comparing costs of the Sulahuili. And here are my final thoughts. Do you understand the cost of the displacement of these multi-generational families? Do you understand the cost of displacing endangered species? And do you know what the ripple effect is going to be in the Marin community and beyond? These are all very unsettling questions that we are hearing from others. And it was just said that you feel that it is important to hear from the community. And we just want to ask, are you listening to the community right now? Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you. Maria G, then John Dulcini, please.
Hello, Monty, congratulations. Thank you for meeting us out at the ranch to review the Sulahuili last year. We really appreciated your time in doing that. I want to thank you to the board for taking our comments for these past 2.5 years. As mentioned before, we understand that this is a daunting process and that so many key factors are in play, which will ultimately determine the outcome for the final selection in your strategic water assessment portfolio. You have all given time to our concerns, and we appreciate a greater depth of analysis that is being refined behind the scenes. We trust that these deeper dives into the nuts and bolts of the immediate and long-term inundation projects aid in pricing out any initial missing costs that will ultimately result in eminent domain of hundreds, if not thousands of acres, the loss of 13 homes, the loss of 30+ agricultural barns and structures, environmental mitigation requirements, the deconstruction of permanent federal, state, and locally funded agricultural easements, mandated fishery releases, water quality concerns, and operational challenges. For my family, friends, and neighbors, it would be a nail in the coffin for the 4th, 5th, and 6th generations living on and with this land. A heartbreak to us and all that came before that fought so hard to make this life available to us. It will be an elimination of yet another piece of Marin County ag, and it will become an endless, more expensive venture to Marin water than taxpayers are willing to support. Please keep improving reliability incrementally with utilizing modified spillway gates, new conveyance piping, optimizing Sonoma water transmission and contracts, and conservation. Please apply a broad logic to all of your accumulated research. There are too many cards stacked against the feasibility of increasing Sula-Hula. Thank you.
Thank you. And John Dolcini, please.
Good evening, board members. My name is John Dolcini, and I thank you for allowing me to share tonight. I have a thought that I wanted to highlight related to the water expansion alternatives. My understanding as well, similar to my sister, is that 40% of the water is used by consumers for landscape irrigation. That being said, I do not believe it to be morally and ethically appropriate for the eminent domain options to be pursued. Given the large amount of water being used, again, for landscape irrigation as opposed to drinking water, it seems more logical and more practical, especially from a cost perspective, to implement a water conservation program. To spend such a large amount of money and to create such a significant environmental impact, including loss of productive farmland, habitat to endangered species, loss of carbon sequestration, and more, does not seem justified. If conservation will not allow the county to achieve the needed water, perhaps a blend of options should be considered. For example, a smaller reservoir expansion paired with a smaller and more manageable water conservation program. Perhaps an option like this could be pursued as a pilot program to more fully understand if the results are satisfactory. If the pilot program yielded successful results, the avoided cost and environmental impact associated with the larger projects would be considerable. Thank you very much for considering my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Dolcini. There are no further speakers.
Thank you, everybody, as always, for your inputs. As I say, every meeting always heard. We'll move on now to directors and general manager announcements, including any external meetings, and then we'll follow up with board committee reports in the next agenda item. So starting with directors, Jed, do you have anything on your end?
Yeah, on November 7th, we had a meeting with the Marin Sonoma Water Coordination group, which had folks from Sonoma and North Marin, both elected and staff. And it was a healthy, collaborative conversation. We've been doing this for quite some time. And review of current events, how we can work together. But the only action that I think is worthy of bringing forward is that we all know that the contract between Marin and Sonoma is coming due in 2025. It seems that the staff is making quite a bit of progress in negotiating that contract with the Sonoma Water Agency. And there's some complexities, but I think it would be good to encourage the staff to move as quickly as possible, given all the needed approvals to get this thing done. And I'd suggest that the staff have a report out to the board and the public, hopefully as early as early Q1 2025. Obviously sooner the better. But it seems like the conversations are productive and positive. So that was on the 7th. And then on the 15th, we had a great tour of the water quality lab. I was happy to participate in that. What a tremendous facility, talented group of people, and super appreciate everyone's effort to show us our amazing work. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Jed. Larry?
No.
Monty, I'll start with you. Matt?
Ben, just one thank you for the support for sending Watershed staff to the Red Sky Summit back on the 12th of this month. It's one of the biggest wildfire tech conferences in the country, one-day event, and allowed for a lot of good networking. It was really good to see Sean and Carl there interacting with the folks from Marin and a lot of the folks doing some really interesting things. Hopefully, they can bring back some tangible stuff. There was a company that did have an autonomous Black Hawk helicopter there. I'm not sure we're ready for that yet, but still a lot of good stuff out there. So thank you.
I have a couple of items. I was asked by the board president and the executive director of the Marin Agricultural Land Trust, MALT, to meet with them on November 8th. As we well know, MALT has negotiated conservation easements that border the Sulihuli and Nicasio reservoirs that will be affected by any expansion of either of those. And they have definitely appreciated staff outreach, particularly from Paul Sellier, regarding our evaluations of expansions, the process that we're undertaking and where we are. But they also, just want to ensure that Marin Water board members all have a good understanding of their investments and obligations around those properties. So following that meeting, I will ask staff if we can consider options for all of us to get up to speed on MALT's, considerations, and if possible, include them in some type of discussion. I know that could be difficult to coordinate, but I'd like to follow up, Ben and Molly, just to see how we might be able to do that. And then on November 9th, I walked to the top of Red Hill. This is a pretty distinct land feature in central San Anselmo, where the hub is. And I walked up there with a member of the San Anselmo Open Space Committee. That committee and town staff have collaborated, invested a lot of time and effort to build a trail up to the top of Red Hill. And they've done a lot of great vegetation management, impressive removal of brooms so that there's really nice open spaces, views, and now some good historical signage that talks about the history of that area. Interestingly, and the reason I walked up there is we own a small parcel, about 2,500 square feet of land at the very top of Red Hill. Apparently, so I spoke with Sean, and he and staff have done a little research, and apparently that was considered as a site for a water tank at some point. There's some old infrastructure there. It may even predate Marin Water. But we don't use it. We don't plan to use it. And about 10 years ago, we offered it up for sale. There's no direct road access, so nobody can get up there. And we had no buyers for it. So the San Anselmo Open Space Committee is very interested in any possibilities of a long-term lease or a donation of this land so that they can complete their trail, put up a picnic table, and maybe more importantly, get into that space and clean it up, get rid of the broom. So that's another point that would be really helpful to follow up on. And then, as Jed mentioned, the water quality tour was interesting, and I'd like to put in a request to see if we could cover some of the topical material on our water quality monitoring efforts, and maybe one of the operations committee meetings. I think it's something that everyone would benefit from hearing about. Okay, we'll move on then.
I do have just a brief, if I could.
I wasn't going to forget, but
Okay.
General Manager's report.
Got it. I just have a few words for me, but I think also reasonably on behalf of staff, thanking Monty for the last 4 years. I don't typically do this, but in this, I found you, Monty. One, you referenced the 4 years and all the activities and challenges we had. And I think it was real in terms of a very big 4 years. And I think we really benefited from you on the board and your leadership. I've found you to be thoughtful, looking at issues objectively and fact-driven, and always respectful and patient to staff as we work through issues. So I just wanted to thank you, Monty, for your service and your time on the board.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ben. We'll move on to board committee reports then. Larry, I think the only one committee meeting we've had since our last board meeting was the operations committee and special board meeting on November 15th.
Okay. I'd like to say one thing, Ben. I think that maybe 2 years ago, we had a weather report with each board meeting. I think, as Jed indicated the other day, I noticed that he has realized that the drought could be here. Tomorrow, maybe it'll be different with the Aquasuri River, but we'll see if it comes or not. But I think that would be helpful just to give us a little insight on what's happening with rain.
Yeah, we'll look at that. We had been monthly bringing water supply updates. That kind of slows down in the summer when things don't really change. But now that we're into the season, I think bringing that back and maybe more frequently than monthly.
Yeah, the
look
one
into
reason
it.
I ask is I've been getting questioned by a lot of people unrelated to the water district, just what's happening with the weather. And I said, well, I know we pay for weather forecasting, but I'm not sure what the results are because I haven't heard anything. So it would be at least a cocktail conversation interesting. Okay, on November 15th, we held an operations committee meeting. Two things were discussed. The first one was the pavement management study and pilot program that are ongoing to see if we can work out something with the cities and try to reduce the overall cost of paving to the district and its projects. The second task was to review the district's infrastructure, that is the communications within the district. It was a very interesting meeting. A lot of changes coming with respect to the way communication is done. Interestingly enough, still based on landlines, that at least a form of landlines, internally at least. The committee referred this to the board for approval at a future meeting. And these reports and the video are available on the webpage.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Next item is approval of our consent calendar. Today we have 5 items on our consent calendar. Approval of the minutes from our meeting on November 6th, our general manager's report for October 2024, approval of a third amendment to district lease number 67 with Marin Radio Emergency Authority at the Forbes Reservoir site in San Rafael. Fourth is approve and accept a permanent grant of easement to the district for existing water facilities at 1876 Centro West Street, Tiburon. And then finally, approve a resolution recognizing John Clark for his 32 years of service to Marin Water. Terry, do you have any public comments on items in our consent calendar?
There are none.
Do we have a motion then to approve our consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Terry, roll call vote, please.
Vice President Sampson,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
and President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Next, we'll move on to our regular agenda, starting with item 9A, which is discussion of a possible adjustment of board compensation. Welcome, General Counsel Molly McLean.
This one. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Good evening, President Kush, directors. I'm Molly McLean, District General Counsel. Tonight, I am here to talk to you about a proposed increase to board compensation and the purpose and goals of the discussion. And it is only an information item. I'll get to the details of that in just a moment, but is to have a little bit of an overview of the current board compensation, briefly touch on the fact that we did update the board compensation policy. We'll look at legal requirements, comparable agencies, and then look at the staff proposal for board compensation increase. So first, I want to just go backwards to May of this year. We did some policy updates and some work on policy, board policies this year. And one of those was board policy number 42, our board compensation policy. It complies with California Government Code Section 53232.1, and specifically identifies what constitutes rendering service to the district for purposes of board compensation. One thing that we did not touch on at that time was the compensation amount. We did talk about bringing that back as a future item, and that's what we're doing tonight. So the legal requirements specifically of a compensation amount paid to board members, those governing statutes are set forth in California Water Code Section 20200 and following provisions. They basically summarize them. I'll summarize them, and they basically address the fact that compensation must be a per diem amount, so not a monthly stipend. And we talked about that previously. That any increase in compensation must be approved by an ordinance adopted at a public hearing, which means special notice requirements in publication. And that any change would be effective only not until 60 days following the adoption of the ordinance. That the increase would not be more than 5% per calendar year, and that the number of days for services paid would not exceed 10 days per month. So those are the governing legal requirements. Our current board compensation amount is set forth in District Code 2.10.060. You can see it here. It is established the $200 per diem amount and sets forth not more than 10 days services rendered in any calendar month for compensation. That was adopted in the end of 2016. So that's the last time that the compensation has been updated. And the compensation amount of $200 went into effect in February of 2017. It has not been changed since then. So looking at some comparable agencies, you can see here I've listed agencies that are comparable to us. They're districts, they're water districts for the most part here. And you can see that they also have the per diem amount. And for the most part, they're higher than where the district finds itself currently. So staff took a look at what would an increase to board compensation look like if we were to apply the maximum allowed at the 5% per calendar year. So you can see the 2017 is the $200 amount that was adopted at the end of 2016. And all the way through, if there were an annual 5% increase, you can see that in 2025, the amount would be $295.49. Staff then looked at the consumer price index in the region. So the San Francisco Hayward Consumer Price Index, also known as CPI-U, which is what is generally used for employee wage increases, and apply that going back to February of 2017, using the most current CPI number that we could find, and applying that, the per diem amount would increase from $200 to $252.70, or approximately 3% a year. So it's a bit different. So staff's proposing that the new per diem amount be considered by the board of $250, because the goal, I think, in our mind is to keep pace with inflation, and that's what the CPI application does. And I just want to pause here and recognize that I think this can be an awkward subject for board directors talking about their own compensation. And it's done at a public setting very intentionally so that there is that accountability. But I think there are really good reasons to consider adjustments from time to time. So one reason is to keep pace with inflation. If you fall way behind, you're looking at potentially larger increases at rare points in time, as opposed to trying to not lag too far behind. Also, to recognize the time that's dedicated by each board member to the district, both for yourselves, but also for your fellow board members. In some cases, to help offset the loss of income that board members incur because they're dedicating their time. elsewhere to work of the district, and also to encourage members of the community to consider participation in public service. So with that, the recommendation tonight is to consider holding a public hearing on November 21st. That's Thursday at the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Why then? Because we noticed a public hearing for that date. We were trying to fit this in before there was any changeover from the election, not wanting to have a new board member kind of face up to this process. So we, we're doing a little bit of a rush to make sure that we were noticing things appropriately in the paper for a public hearing. So that would be the next step. That would be Thursday. We are having this meeting tonight at a board meeting to really examine the details, but the public hearing and the potential adoption of ordinance is proposed for Thursday. And I'll take any questions, comments, or direction.
Thanks, Molly. Molly, what's the process for going forward with the public hearing? Do we pass a vote on that, or is it?
Right. So staff has already published notification of the public hearing to happen. So it's already that notice has already been done in compliance with the legal requirements, Government Code Section 6066. At the Finance and Administration Committee meeting / special board meeting, you would simply have
No, but sorry, Molly, I was
yeah.
thinking more about how do we get there? Does it, do we require a vote of the board to go forward?
No, I'm just looking if there's any strenuous objections, it's already planned to
Okay.
proceed. But if there's, an sort of adverse interest of the board, then certainly it's not, it's the call of the board if they want to intervene and.
Right. So the default is we would move forward.
Correct.
Unless there's strong
correct.
pushback tonight.
Yes, thank
Got
you.
it.
Sorry.
A clarification question for process.
Yes.
The recommendation is up to us to determine how we would like to see that for the public hearing. It's not set in stone.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Any other, Monty, do you want to start us off with
Sure.
questions?
As the person who will see no benefit in this. So first question, Molly, is the recommendation to just catch up and then set it at that, or is it to continue to keep pace with inflation and
So at this point, I think we're in a bit of a catch up. If there were interest on the board to continue the process, it's a public hearing ordinance process, but we could put it on a more regular schedule at direction of the board to come back and revisit it. And more often than every, many, many years later.
Okay, but we couldn't and I'm not saying this is the right thing to do per se, but we couldn't adopt an ordinance wherein it just keeps pace with inflation or.
Correct.
Okay.
That's not how I read the statute.
Okay, that's just good to know. I mean, I'll jump out in front of this, and I've said this previously in other meetings that I really do think that we need to keep pace with inflation. For board compensation. None of us do this as at the amount of compensation we get. It would not be a good living wage in Marin, let's just say. But we don't do this for the money, obviously. But I am mindful that of the last bullet point that you had on the list, I think is particularly compelling to me, which is that service is very challenging to live in Marin and to serve in this community because it is so expensive to live here. And if we don't have some reasonable compensation, we will never get low income candidates because it is time. Time is money and it is an impact. And again, it won't be, it's not enough to make a luxurious living, but it's reasonable. So I think that it is important. I know it's very awkward for board members to do. I'm glad that we're doing it because I can step up in front of this because it isn't something that's going to benefit me. Even if I was staying on the board, I would have the same opinion because I think it's an important standard to set for as a precedence, if nothing else, for future board members. So I appreciate that it's being brought forward and I'm supportive of us moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monty. Matt?
Following up on one of Monty's questions, it talked about an escalator or catch up 5% to deal with coal. So this if we were going to bring forward a resolution, it would include language as in 5% per year increase until we revisit, or am I reading it incorrectly?
Actually, the proposal is to just catch up one time by applying the consumer price index, not 5%, but the consumer price index, which is an average of 3% since the last increase. And then there's not a way under the statute the way that I read it, to include an automatic increase. So it is an intentional action that the board needs to take each time. So the best I think that I could propose for the board is to put it on a regular schedule, for staff to understand that on a regular schedule is something that will be visited. 5% is the maximum amount allowed by statute annually increased. Staff is simply just looking at the consumer price index as a way to keep up with inflation.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And that makes quite a bit of sense. I'm looking at your slide under board compensation comparison. It would be interesting for me to have a new column that provides what districts provide benefits and not. I think as when looking at total compensation would be helpful to understand this, because I'm not ready to move forward with an increase yet. I don't, for me, I don't think, I out of respect for Monty's comments, I do think that there is an issue there, but I'm not sure this solves it. Because, you know, $500 a month is quite a bit of money, but is that really solving the problem we're looking at here? And I don't know. And so to increase it already, I'm not there yet. And so for right now, I'm not in support.
Thanks, Matt. Larry? Jed? Any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Molly, for the presentation. What I don't like about this is any political nature involved, that it becomes like a vote of the people paying themselves. So I am in favor of some sort of thoughtful process going forward that does not come around election year. Someone said we shouldn't be talking about this during election years. I think we should take away that element as much as we possibly can and have an annual review, that the annual review should be based on the consumer price index increases that you used for this recommendation, and no more than 5%, as is dictated by California state law. I believe that's what it is. And that be brought forward, and that we look at things like consumer price index or other factors in the staff recommendations, so we don't have to dictate that it exactly is based on that, but we have a review that would consider that as one of the as one input. I am supportive of the change, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jed. I think it's reasonable to look at, the impacts of inflation on this and the need to keep up. But, I think my understanding, I think this is maybe reflected in the public, and this is certainly what I understood when I was a member of the public, are these payments are meant to defray the costs associated with participating in meetings, whether it's for childcare or for hours that you're not able to work on other income generating activities. Given that, I think it's reasonable to increase the what we receive in compensation to account for other lost income or expenses. But what I would then like to see if we do move forward is maintaining the $2,000 maximum that we're allowed to receive. So limiting then to 8 paid days rather than 10, so that there isn't this perception that it's actually a revenue source. This is really meant to, I believe, to defray expenses, not as a supplementary income. I don't think that's how, if income was associated with this type of public service, it would be designated differently, not for time spent in meetings. So if we do go forward with the increase, which I think is reasonable, then I would ask that we reduce the number of days that are eligible for payment.
there any other comments to that?
I think that's a really thoughtful suggestion, and I would support that as well.
So I will say that the packet for Thursday has been prepared. There is a draft ordinance. However, there's no reason that the number can't be changed with the vote of the board at the public hearing. So I take that input back, and then we will have the public hearing on Thursday, and we'll take the specifics of what the board wants to consider approving at that time.
Any final board member thoughts or questions before we open it up for public comment?
Are we reasonably sure we have a quorum on Thursday?
We believe we have a quorum on Thursday, yes.
Because I'm gone.
So,
Yes.
okay. Okay, then, and if there are no other comments, public comment, please, Terry.
Yes, Mr. Phil Sauter.
Obviously, I'm a real fan of seeing the board's expenses adequately compensated. I don't think we could ever get this amount of talent and the amount of time that's put in by the members of this board for $2,500 a month from any other group of people. So I'm all for seeing the increase that at least keeps pace with other similar districts. The one thing that kind of hit me is scheduling a public hearing 2 days from now. If anybody's gunning for, the optics of this thing, it doesn't look as good as if you allowed more time for a public hearing. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of people getting in the way of this, but there's just a chance. And I would say, why take it? Why do 48 hours notice on a public hearing? It just seems too short. Thanks.
I would like to respond to that. I think it's an excellent point that Mr. Sauter said. And what I would say is that actually the notice was published 2 weeks ago for the first time in the Marin IJ, and then a week ago for the second time in the Marin IJ. So having a public hearing does require that we publish notice in the paper, which is different than posting it in the agenda. Of course, we have it on the agenda for the board tonight, and then we have it on the agenda for the board for the meeting on Thursday. So I think there has been a good amount of notice to the public.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks for the comment, Phil. Okay, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is a review of future board and committee meetings. Terry?
Yes, good evening. So tomorrow is our Communications and Water Efficiency Committee meeting, and Thursday is our Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Next week, have a happy Thanksgiving with you and your families. I will be out next week, so just FYI. The following week is I believe it's the thank you, Aqua, is their fall conference, December 3rd through the 5th. And the North Bay Watershed Association meetings, December 6th. The next board meeting is the 10th of December.
Thank you, Terry. We are now going to adjourn to closed session to discuss 2 items of pending litigation, a Workers' Compensation Board of Appeals case and the lawsuit that was filed against our pilot of bicycle trail sharing on the watershed.
Great.
I don't see any public comment for that either.
Thank you for checking.
Take some with you, Phil.
Hello, everyone. We're reconvening the open session. We'll announce that the closed session was adjourned at 8:55 with no actionable items to report. And with that, the board meeting of November 19th, 2024 is adjourned.
Thank you.